Howdy Freunde, willkommen zum neuen YouTube-Video von mir. Mein Name ist Freddy und heute soll es um tatsächlich ein bisschen ernsteres Thema gehen, denn heute soll es um die Reaktion auf ein YouTube-Video von Kajzoo gehen. Der Mann hat sich unglaublich viel Arbeit gemacht und ein wirklich sehr interessantes und gut anzuschauendes YouTube-Video gemacht. Ich habe mir das Ganze im Stream angeschaut und dementsprechend möchte ich euch das hier auf YouTube auch nochmal zeigen, meine Reaktion darauf. Es ist wirklich bisschen härtere Kost, kann man quasi sagen. Aber mich interessiert ganz doll eure Meinung zu dem ganzen Thema. Also schreibt gerne einen Kommentar. Ich lese mir definitiv alle Kommentare durch und werde auf eure Kommentare auch antworten, sofern sich das ergibt. Also lasst uns nicht lange weiter schnacken und wir starten gleich rein ins Video.
The popular online multiplayer game World of Tanks is experiencing a significant downtrend as it's losing thousands of players every day, even though the game has been extremely profitable with around 7.
Let's see. Also wir haben hier, also der Kajzoo hat sich hier drauf bezogen. Spielerzahlen 2013, 2014 bei 9,1 Millionen, dann 2015 auf 16 sogar fast 10 Millionen aktive Spieler. Dann kam die Fender und Scorpion ins Spiel, 8 Millionen und seitdem stark am Fallen. Also in 5 Jahren, 6 Jahren inzwischen, um gut 300% gefallen.
$1 billion generated throughout the years. According to third-party sources, it looks like Wargaming, the game's publisher, is getting ready to finally pull the plug. Despite being plagued by significant issues such as terrible matchmaking, predatory monetization tactics, and lazily reskinned and overpriced premium tanks, Wargaming is intensifying its aggressive monetization strategies once again. This appears to be an attempt to extract every last bit from the player base. In this video, we will explore and find an answer as to why I think World of Tanks is dying, this time for good.
Hast du die ganzen Überschriften?
If you aren't familiar with World of Tanks, it operates on a freemium business model where the game is free to play, but participants also have the option to pay for premium features. The game mainly focuses on player versus player gameplay, with each player controlling an armored vehicle from the period of pre-World War II to the Cold War era. The most popular game mode is called Random Battles, where players are matched up against others in a 15v15 scenario. World of Tanks has been on the market for almost 15 years, which is already impressive. Combining this with the data I could gather online from different third-party websites, the game has been one of the most profitable ventures ever created, with a rough estimate of making around $7 billion as of 2024. Before we delve into this video, I just want to say that I love World of Tanks and have been playing it for more than 10 years. There is still so much potential in terms of content and player enjoyment, so the last thing I want is for it to be neglected and end up like one of those dead MMOs we frequently encounter nowadays. Going back in the history of World of Tanks, things started to take a darker turn for the game's future around 2017, when completely overpowered premium tanks, which could only be obtained with real money, were introduced. Until that point, most of the tanks available for cash were significantly worse than their freely obtainable counterparts. When the first game-breaking tank, the Chrysler GF, was released, they even went as far as threatening one of the biggest content creators with a copyright strike on his YouTube channel. The content creator called them out on their aggressive monetization tactics, and although he took on a very vulgar tone towards the developers, his criticism was not.
Das will ich mir auch einmal kurz anschauen. Ist das auch in den Sources? Ah, das ist gar nicht von ihm. Sind das nur die Sources? Achso, ja, okay, dann schade. Ich hätte gerne den Artikel noch gelesen. Aber ist hier nicht bei. Schade.
When the first game-breaking tank, the Chrysler GF, was released, they even went as far as threatening one of the.
A prominent World of Tanks YouTuber who is a member of a promotion program for the game had to remove a critical video after the developer threatened a copyright strike against it. Aber wer? War es davor? Weil den kenne ich nicht. Ich kenne den Fall nicht, deswegen frage ich. Das ist 2017 gewesen, da bin ich nicht so richtig aktiv in WoT gewesen. Bin erst ein bisschen später richtig aktiv gewesen.
The biggest content creators with a copyright strike on his YouTube channel. The content creator called them out on their aggressive monetization tactics, and although he took on a very vulgar tone towards the developers, his criticism was not entirely baseless, because the pricey $80 worth of premium tank had literally no frontal weak spots, which
Hat er auch nach wie vor nicht. Absolut dummes
is a massive
Teil.
issue when it comes to the game balance. Even though Wargaming later apologized for this,
Statement about the Self-Auch Incident. Dear Commanders. Das ist ganz schön lange her. Das ist ganz schön schlecht gealtert.
The release of these tanks has definitely done its damage and made many upset around the 2017-2018 period. Jumping to 2019, according to
Und ab dann fangen halt auch diese Spielerzahlen an zu droppen, ne?
third-party sources, the game had a player base of around 7.1 million active players, which is still
Also haben diesen Jahren hat die Spielerbasis ja quasi gar nicht abgenommen. Ne? Das fing erst hier so in 2021 an, hat es geknallt. Und von 2022 auf 23 2 Millionen weniger. Ja, das ist geisteskrank, die letzten 3 Jahre, wie doll das Spiel an Popularität verloren hat. Wenn diese Zahlen halt stimmen.
very respectable. However, if you look at the numbers between 2019 and 2020, we can see that the player base stagnated, which normally would not be a bad thing for an older MMO. However, let's not forget that this was the period of massive lockdowns and curfews induced by the surge of the COVID-19 pandemic. Most online games grew significantly during this period, as many people were forced to stay home. The player count of World of Tanks stagnated during this period, which is already a bad sign for the game's health. However, up until 2019, we had major content updates throughout each year. 2020 was
2016 New Tech Tree, 2 New Tech Trees, 2 New Tech... Das ist eigentlich auch mal interessant. Tank Balance Updates, 2 UI Changes, Physics Changes, Sound Changes, 2 Game Mechanic Changes, 1 New Map, 1 Map Balance Update, 5 New Tech Tree Updates, 6 Tank Balance Changes, 6 Game Mechanic Changes, 2 New Game Modes, 2 New Maps, 2 UI Changes, 3 MM Changes, 1 New Currency. Da kam die Bunts ins Spiel, glaube ich. 5 New Maps, 5 Map Balance Changes, 5 Tank Changes, 5 New Tech Trees. Dann 2020, ein Map Change, ein New Game Mechanik, ein neues Tank Balance Update, ein neuer Tech Tree. Die letzten 2 Jahre kam auch keine neue Map raus, ne? 2020 kamen die letzten Karten ins Spiel. Das ist 4 Jahre her. Oder was? Ach nee, 2023 kam eine neue Map. Das ist nicht sortiert. Ja, keine Ahnung. Das kann ich ehrlich gesagt, das ist so schön aufgelistet, dass ich da überhaupt nichts draus lesen kann, ob das jetzt mehr oder weniger geworden ist, was ins Spiel reingekommen ist. Also kann ich dir euch nicht sagen. Ist das jetzt mehr oder weniger? Also ihr sieht natürlich 2022 sieht jetzt einfach weniger aus. Besonders wenn man hier so guckt, 5, 5, 5, 3, 2, 8 und hier ist es dann 1, 3, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, ne? Das ist weniger geworden. Aber ob das jetzt, weißt du, Starterregel, darum geht's gar nicht. Ich gucke mir das einfach nur an. Ich betrachte das hier einfach. Und du siehst ja, also wir sind uns ja, glaube ich, alle einig, dass das hier weniger geworden ist. Also das sieht nach weniger aus.
when game development started to slow down, and it significantly slowed down after 2021. All of these sourced by Wargaming's own documentation of each update throughout the years. Lesser game development with significantly increased monetization obviously leads to many...
Das finde ich aber stimmt. Da hat er jetzt nicht unrecht, dass es weniger neues Development gab. Besonders den beliebtesten Spielmodus, Random Battles, da gab es weniger Veränderungen, finde ich, als in den Jahren davor.
People getting bored and fed up with this strategy, and this combined with the naturally shrinking player base is all very concerning to look at. By 2022, according to third-party sources, the player base shrunk from 7.1 million during the COVID-19 pandemic to a mere 4.5 million, which is a sharp 37% drop. In my view, it was at this point when Wargaming realized that the game is rapidly losing players, and instead of changing their development strategy, they decided it would be best if they start milking the players as much as they can. We had never seen so much monetized content before. To put things into perspective, in the years leading up to 2023, we only saw 1 or 2 loot box events at max, and maybe another major event, such as buying a tank using in-game resources worth a couple $100. On average, according to third-party sources, they were making around $400 to $550 million every year. However, in 2023, they started taking things a bit too far. The amount of monetized content has been increased twofold, and we had 4 loot box events where you could gamble.
Lucky? Da sind noch Weihnachtsboxen hier. Hä, das sind doch nicht 2. Ach so, stimmt. Es gibt ja diese Luna-Boxes auch noch. Aber das ist doch dieses Jahr, oder nicht? Das sind doch die Boxen von... Es gab die Weihnachtsboxen, die Neujahrsboxen, die chinesischen Neujahrboxen, die Lucky-Boxen und die Boxen jetzt. Reden wir über 2022?
Every year. However, in 2023 they started
2023 gab es schon Neujahrsboxen nach...
The amount of monetized content has been increased twofold, and we had 4 loot box events where you...
Bin ich jetzt irgendwie ein bisschen doof? Es gab doch das, also, Neujahrs-Event, Lucky-Event, dann gab's doch Waffenträger-Event. Das ist aber hier das falsche Bild, ne? Das hat Kajzoo dann falsch gemacht. Weil das hier, das Event, das kam erst dieses Jahr dazu. Er hat gesagt 2023, hört doch mal rein.
To $550 million every year. However, in 2023 they started
2023.
taking things a bit too far. The amount of monetized content has been increased twofold and we had 4 lootbox events.
Mars hatte letztens Boxen. Boxen letztes Jahr? Nee. Dann hatten wir als nächstes die Boxen hier. Die zum St. Patrick's Day. Dann hatten wir die Waffenträgerboxen. Link mal rein. Schick mal einen Link rein. Mit Timestamp müssen.
Where you could gamble for tanks, 2 black market events, which
Letztes Jahr hatte das Mars-Event keine Boxen, Jungs. Bin ich doof oder was? Das ist völlig falsch abgespeichert?
Mir haben Sie schon haufenweise Kreditpunkte eingebracht.
Ah, doch.
Außerdem füllst du damit den Auftragsfortschritt,
Was war denn in den Boxen drin?
der wiederum zu heftigen Belohnungen führt. Insgesamt hast du 11 Welten erforschen. Dann entdecken Sie jetzt natürlich auch Premium-Panzer, wie den seltenen TL7.
Ach, den TL7 gab's damals. Ne, Kari war in den Dingsboxen drin. Okay, sorry. Sorry, Stormtrooper, hab ich dir Unrecht getan.
Den Chieftain Prototype, den T77, den IS-3A, den T44-100 und mehr. Stellen Sie Ihr kosmisches Glück noch heute auf die Probe. Also, wo war ich? Du hast 11...
Ja, ist schlecht gealtert.
heavily builds on the FOMO aspect and 2
Also 4-mal Boxen und 2-mal diese Sachen hier plus Black Market plus alles
one had to spend
mögliche.
around $200 worth of in-game resources to be able to buy that single tank. And now, are you ready for the truly crazy part? Coming to 2024, just in these 5 months alone, we've already had 4 gamble loot box events full of really bad tanks, a black market which heavily builds on the FOMO aspect once again, an assembly shop, and 2 other major monetized events. Once again, these mentioned events happened in just
Ja, es ist geisteskrank. Also dieses Jahr ist wirklich geisteskrank, was VW Gaming aus uns rauspressen möchte.
4 months. The rate of monetization increase has been absolutely off the charts, and especially in the past 3 years, looking at this chart and data, they've managed to quadruple the monetization and revenue. And then this year in just 4 months, we've nearly met the entirety of last year's monetization, which was already unprecedented, and if this doesn't scream the game is dying, we are entering the milking phase to the general player base, I would be absolutely shocked. This milking approach isn't completely alien to online games, as usually with any multiplayer game, 1-2 years before pulling the plug or entering maintenance, the publishers go crazy with their monetization and they give the notion that nothing is wrong, they act like the game is fine and that it's still under active development, which is later followed by a farewell announcement. Thank you for your support over the years, but unfortunately it is time we move on. Take a look at the combination of these charts portraying how much content Wargaming added and how many monetized events were taking place during the years.
Er hat einen Fairpoint, würde ich sagen, Jungs, oder? Also, wenn man das sich mal so vor Augen hält. Er hat einen sehr, 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 sehr fairen Pointer. Das ist crazy. Vielleicht soll ich mein Studium doch mal fertig machen. Weil ich sitze gerade auf einem sinkenden Schiff, wenn man sich das hier so anguckt.
After 2018, you can clearly see that the development slowed down significantly, and even though the game could have massively grown during the pandemic, it didn't, as they were extremely reluctant to actively develop their product. For example, in the last 4 years, we had only received 4 new maps, which is a super low amount, and along the regular introduction of new tanks is the basic building cube of the game. I've talked about loot boxes before, and the main reason they're seen as predatory is because nowadays almost every new premium tank can only be obtained by buying loot boxes and gambling for them. Back in the day, these loot boxes were very exclusive and only came out during the Holiday Ops event around Christmas. You could find a lot of good stuff in these boxes, including gold, the premium currency in World of Tanks, and even now, these Christmas boxes are generally a great deal. Plus, there's a pity mechanic that ensures for every 50 boxes you buy, you get a random...
Aber das ist nur wegen der EU so. Das ist nur wegen der EU so. Das ist nur wegen den europäischen Richtlinien, dass du eine garantierte Belohnung bekommen musst.
From the list. The problems start when these boxes are no longer special and start coming out almost every month, which has been happening this year. When Wargaming stuffs these boxes with a bunch of premium tanks that most players already own, the chances of getting one of the few new unique ones drop. Because of this, you have to buy more boxes to get that one tank you're looking for, which means you end up spending more money. Usually, these unique tanks aren't available on their own until much later, sometimes months or even years, which definitely triggers fear of missing out. Another major issue is that these new boxes don't have any gold in them. Instead, when you open a box worth about $1, you might get just a single XP booster, a decal, a camo, or a small amount of credits. There is no gold at all, and many of the new tanks in these boxes are just reskinned versions of existing tanks. Seriously, how low effort is that? For example, the Miel is a reskinned Burask, the Forest Spirit is a reskinned SU-130PM, and the Alembic is an Astron Rex with a 3D style. Are they out of ideas for new tanks, or are they just trying to save on development costs? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. On top of that, many of the new tanks that aren't reskinned and are found in these loot boxes are terribly balanced. Some are so weak they could be dropped a tier and still perform poorly. Another strange step is that Wargaming recently decided to shut down the World of Tanks official forums for good, and it's causing quite a stir in the community. Their announcement reads, as of May 20th, 2024, the World of Tanks forums have been closed permanently, and threads are no longer accessible. We have transitioned our activities to more dynamic and accessible platforms that facilitate better and more immediate communication with our community. The developers stated that they want to focus more on newer platforms like Discord, Reddit, and social media, which they think are better for quick and lively interactions. Now, there are multiple reasons as to why they could have made this move. Platforms like Discord and social media have broader reach and can make for quicker, more spontaneous interactions within the community. Maintaining forums requires significant resources, including paid moderation and technical upkeep, and by shutting down the forums, their team can redirect these resources to other areas of community management. However, a lot of players aren't happy about this move, as the forums were a goldmine of knowledge packed with detailed guides, strategies, and discussions about different game mechanics. For many new players, the forums were the go-to place to familiarize themselves with the game and get advice from experienced players. Now, all this valuable info is going to disappear, and unlike social media where posts come and go, the forums were organized and easy to search, so you could always find what you needed. Without this central hub, a lot of important guides and discussions will be lost, making it harder for new players to find what they are looking for.
Aber
The forums also have
also ich kann es irgendwo verstehen. Forums sind einfach. Also ich sage euch, die haben keine Garantie, dann vielleicht nicht. Es ist einfach nur, damit sie sich einen riesen Shitstorm. Ich dachte, das wäre eine EU-Rechtlinie, dass du das machen musst. Na, wie dem auch sei, dass dieses Thema mit den Foren, also ich bin halt einfach nie im Forum gewesen. Deswegen hat es mich überhaupt nicht gejuckt. Also mich persönlich. Ich kann natürlich verstehen, dass einige Leute, die vielleicht auch ein bisschen älter sind als ich, so used to Forennutzung sind, dass das einfach so ein Ding ist, dass man seit, keine Ahnung, seit es den Foren gibt, und das war quasi der Grundstein fürs Internet, dass man das benutzt hat. Also weiß ich nicht. Foren sind geil. Ja, ich bin da nicht so, aber auf jeden Fall, ja, sie hätten das Ding ja wenigstens noch accessible machen lassen können, weißt du?
build a strong sense of community, and with them gone, this community might get scattered across different platforms, which could hurt the quality of discussions. There's also the issue of how info is managed on newer platforms. Discord and Reddit are great, but they're not as organized, and it's harder to keep track of topics, and valuable posts can easily get buried under new stuff. This
Ja,
could
das
lead
ist,
to
das
the
stimmt
same
halt.
questions being asked over and over again, and a lot of useful info will be lost in the shuffle. In short, whatever reason they might have for all this, shutting down the official forums has some big downsides, as they were more than just a place to chat. They were a cornerstone of the community and a key resource for learning about the game. Now a few words about the
Ja, die Kommunikation, das stimmt schon, aber auf der anderen Seite denke ich mir halt so, ja, aber wenn du einen Guide oder dir irgendwas richtig Wichtiges anschauen willst, Bro, YouTube ist deine erste Anlaufstelle. Was für Forum? Also weiß ich nicht, ich glaube, YouTube ist da deutlich besser. Wenn ich mir einen Guide oder sowas anschaue, das Einzige, wo ich jetzt sagen könnte, so, ja, okay, also das Einzige, wo ich mal ein Forum benutze, ist, wenn es um Autos geht. Ja, wenn ich irgendwie was wissen will über ein Auto, wie man was ein- und ausbaut oder sonst irgendwelche Tipps und Tricks, dann habe ich mal ein Forum aufgerufen, aber das war es halt auch. Weil es darüber keine YouTube-Videos gibt.
North American server of World of Tanks. In short, the NA server for WoT is having a really tough time. Currently, the server's activity levels are extremely low, and it's honestly a miracle that Wargaming has not shut it down or merged it with the EU server yet. To put things into perspective, last Sunday morning, there were only about 8,000 players online, which is extremely low. With fewer players, inadequate tank balance is even a bigger problem, as there's less variety in matchmaking. For
Das
example,
stimmt.
if there are
Das
100
merke ich ja, dass
players
der
in the
EU-Server
NA
kacke
queue,
ist.
it feels like
NA-Server
you're
ist.
always up against the same overpowered tanks, and this lack of diversity makes the game a lot less fun. New players have it especially hard, as they often get matched against veterans, which can be really discouraging. This all gets worse at lower tiers, where newcomers constantly face experienced players, making it tough for them to enjoy the game and stick around. These reasons all contribute to the server's reputation suffering greatly, and potential new players are being turned off by negative reviews and the steep learning curve.
Yeah.
The NA competitive scene feels almost dead, with players often battling the same small group of people under different tags each campaign. Unless there are bigger changes, like more rewards or gold on a global map, things will keep getting worse, says a prominent member of one of the NA top clans. What's also pretty alarming is that Wargaming had just fired the head of community on NA. Could this potentially signal a possible merger with the EU server? What are your thoughts about this? Please write me in the comments. Overall, the NA server is in a really rough spot right now.
Meint ihr, die mergen NA und die EU? Dann hast du doch echt ein richtig krasses Ping-Problem mit NA, oder nicht? Das kann ich mir eigentlich nicht vorstellen.
Right now, with declining player
Aber die
numbers
Server zumachen können sie halt auch nicht.
and balance issues, creating a vicious cycle that is hard to break without major
Dann hast du halt, dann spielt kein Mensch mehr. Dann spielt halt einfach kein Mensch mehr. Und die haben nur noch einen Server auf NA. US Central. Punkt.
changes.
Und da spielt ganz Kanada, ganz US und ganz Mexiko drauf.
Another main issue for the substantial player loss and massive disinterest recently is that Wargaming rarely introduces any non-monetized content. Wargaming's focus on monetized content at the expense of content available to all is quite problematic for several reasons. If they release too many paid events, it will simply alienate the player base and harm the game's reputation. Lately, a lot of players, including myself, feel that the game prioritizes profit way over player experience, which generates a lot of frustration and makes many outright quit the game. Now, obviously, the primary reason for pushing monetized content is to generate consistent revenue. Free-to-play games like World of Tanks rely heavily on in-game purchases to sustain their operations, as it costs a lot of money running the game with all its features, and to pay for all this, Wargaming offers purchasable items to ensure a steady income stream. Even though the gaming market is highly competitive, Wargaming is adopting more aggressive monetization strategies to maximize profits, which leads down a road of different issues. Players who feel that they cannot progress or compete without spending money may lose interest in the game, and if players feel that the game is too focused on monetization, they will simply leave for other games that offer a better combination of free and paid content. If the general image about a game is that it's too pay to win, it will harm the game's reputation and make it difficult to attract new players, as negative reviews and word of mouth can deter potential newcomers from trying the game. Clan Wars, once a vibrant part of World of Tanks, has significantly declined. Key issues include the long-term disablement of the global map, the absence of new and exciting campaign tanks, and the general lack of incentives and motivations for players to participate. The clan scene has been extremely stale recently and is essentially dead, as there is no compelling reason for many players to engage in it.
Es gibt keinen Grund, Clan Wars zu spielen. Es ist einfach langweilig und
Here's the list of when every single campaign reward tank was released. We can see that over
jedes Jahr, sogar 2 in einem Jahr. Ja, und dann hörte es halt auf, ne? Dann hörte es halt auf.
the years, Wargaming has significantly slowed down the introduction of these vehicles in World of Tanks. Initially, new reward tanks were introduced almost annually, but in recent years, the frequency has decreased drastically, with only 3 new tanks introduced in 7 years.
Das ist gar nichts, das ist einfach gar nichts.
Super
Das ist einfach
and they must understand.
Und der Witz an der ganzen Sache, die Hälfte der Clan Reward Panzer kannst du inzwischen aus dem Bond-Shop kaufen. Du musst nicht mal Clan Reward spielen, um die Clan Reward Panzer zu bekommen. Du kannst einfach Randoms spielen und die Dinger trotzdem kaufen. Für Bonds. So dumm.
Regularly introducing new campaign reward tanks keeps the game dynamic and fresh, and without new content, the game will become stale and demotivate many from participating in Clan Wars, resulting in further player loss from the veterans that have no new tanks to unlock. They should also work to design additional rewards and make it so that these are attainable not just by the top tier clans, but also by mid and lower tier clans too. This will make the rewards available for more and drive more players to take part, and will ensure that clans of all skill levels feel motivated to compete. Back in the day, every campaign had 3 different parts. There were 3 fronts where you had to play with.
Und du hast so viel Gold gemacht früher in den Kampagnen, Junge. Wenn du so 2017 Kampagne aktiv gespielt hast und diesem Zug, der da durchfuhr, gefolgt bist, wo die ganzen Provinzen irgendwie mal 3 Einkommen hatten oder sowas. Du hast so Gold gescheffelt mit dem Clan. Ein Clan hatte so in der guten Kampagne 1 Million Gold zur Verfügung. Oder sogar noch mehr. Also Payout pro Spieler waren 10.000 Gold oder mehr. Das war wirklich geisteskrank. Und heutzutage hast du gar nichts mehr. Kriegst noch so, wenn du erster Platz bist, kriegst du 2000 Gold. Kauf dir was davon.
Tier 6, Tier 8 and Tier 10.
Ich rede nicht von den Seasons. Ich rede von der Kampagne selber. In der Kampagne war das auch so, dass du diesem Zug hinterher fuhrst, das Einkommen, der auf zum Beispiel Berlin, wo du jetzt so 3.500 Gold bekommen hast, das wurde dann verdreifacht auf 9.000 pro Tag. Und wenn du da 3 Tage drauf gesessen hast, hast du halt 18.000 oder nee, 27.000 Gold mitgenommen oder sowas. Ich weiß es nicht mehr genau, aber es war ungefähr so. Oder war das in der Season und hab das falsch abgespeichert? Es ist einfach lange her, ich kann mich da auch, also ich gebe euch ehrlich zu, dass ich da mir auch nicht ganz sicher bin, aber ich meine, das war in den Kampagnen. Also auf jeden Fall konntest du Gold scheveln bis zum Umfallen.
Tanks. This will also add variety to the gameplay
Mit dem
by
guten
allowing
Plan
players
natürlich.
to engage in different levels of competition, and this diversity will
Da war es
also
halt wirklich
cater to
worth
a
noch zu
wider
spielen.
range of players, from beginners to veterans, making Clan Wars more inclusive and exciting. It's absolutely astonishing how the developers have not introduced any new personal missions in World of Tanks for ages.
Das
Right
stimmt.
now, there are only 2 sets of personal missions to complete.
Ja,
The first
ist
one,
echt
with the
traurig.
Object 260 as the final reward, came out in January 2015, almost 10 years ago. The second set, which ends with the Object 279E, was released in August 2018, and we haven't seen anything new since then. These personal missions are well designed because they keep players hooked, making them push through tougher challenges,
Ich wollte gerade sagen, das sind coole
exclusive
Missionen.
tanks, and other cool rewards. Wargaming's reluctance to add more content and rewards in this area might also be speeding up the player base's decline.
Eine neue Kampagne wäre krass.
It's very surprising that despite World of Tanks being a hugely profitable game, there aren't many new maps being added regularly. And when they do add new maps, they often end up being corridor based, which limits strategic options and makes gameplay feel repetitive and dull. Just take a look at these maps. 25 out of the...
Also das ist respektlos. Du kannst nicht Bergpass als neue Map introducen. Nur weil sie verändert wurde. Bergpass ist eine der ältesten Maps, die wir in WoT haben.
39 playable maps at the highest possible tier are corridor maps, which means that they cater to hull-down tanks with good turret armor the most. Another big issue is that areas on some maps are basically no-go zones, and trying to cross these dead man's lands is almost impossible due to heavy fire from camping tanks, which creates frustrating bottlenecks and takes away from the strategic depth that should be part of the game. On top of this, whenever Wargaming reworks a map, it somehow ends up in a significantly worse state that massively punishes aggressive players
Also, ja, Mountain Pass ist
and
halt.
gameplay. New bushes and killing zones
Diese
are
Enden,
made,
also Mountain
and it
Pass
all
haben sie
feels
wirklich
much
komplett
worse compared to
zerlegt.
the original version. Maps
Aber ich
such
meine,
as
mit dem
Erlenberg,
großen Change haben sie es zerlegt, nicht mit denen jetzt für Änderungen.
Urovanka, or Mountain Pass are just a couple of
Mountain, also das ist hier, ne? Das macht mich so sauer, dass sie die Mitte so verändert haben.
examples of
So
map.
eine Scheiß-Map
Additionally,
geworden
the
dadurch.
team promised a lot of reworks,
Kann man nicht
such
aus-
as the
kann man nicht-
enlargement of Ensk or reworking Empire's border, which we've heard nothing about recently. Map development is the cornerstone of this game, and to keep things fresh and exciting, Wargaming should make it a
Bergpass war
priority to
früher,
create new
auch für
maps.
Lights war Bergpass eine Runde, eine Map, wo du einfach auch mal mit 4.000, 5.000 Spotting aus der Runde gehen konntest. Einfach kriegst, und eine Good Day kriegst du noch 1.500 Spotting aus der guten Runde.
Regularly. These new maps should feature a variety of terrains and
So
strategic
eine
options,
Drecksmap
moving
geworden,
away
wirklich
from the
so ein
overused
schlechtes,
corridor-based design.
schlecht
Additionally,
designt.
bringing back old maps with updated graphics and balancing them for current gameplay can bring a nostalgic feel for veteran players and could make many players return to the game. This is key to preventing the game from becoming stale, as updating these maps offers a mix of new and familiar
Ja, Mann.
experiences,
Bin
making the
Sturm.
gameplay more dynamic,
Ich weiß nicht mal,
fun,
wie die mehr
and
heißt.
much more colorful. Matchmaking and tank balancing in World of Tanks is a mess right now. There are way too many scouts, artillery and tank destroyers in the queue, which leads to unbalanced and frustrating battles.
Das muss man sagen, ist auf ein A besser. Du hast viel weniger TDs und Lights in den Queues.
Either the matchmaking
EU
can
ist da
be
wirklich
completely
verseucht.
revamped, or we need changes to control the number of each tank type. For example, having games with 4 scouts, 2-3 RTs and 5 TDs per side is too much. We need limits on the super classes to ensure better gameplay. Heavy and medium tanks are supposed to be the main focus of the game, but too many support tanks simply ruin the balance. And this issue is made much worse by the current map designs that do not allow for strategic play and often end in unavoidable crossfire. Maps should support balanced paths for both heavies and mediums. Overall, we need better balance changes and improved map designs to make the game much more enjoyable. Recently, Wargaming has been introducing a new mechanic with every new tank line, but they must understand that not every new tank in the game needs a new mechanic. Tank balance is closely tied to the overall game balance. Before the introduction of the Chieftain and Object 279, there were many different metas over the years, with tanks like the E5, the 113, the Type 5 Heavy, and the Super Conqueror being the top dogs. For the past 6 years though, the meta has been dominated by the Chieftain and the Object 279, with only the AMX M4 shaking things up recently. High tier gameplay feels very stagnant, and while balance is crucial, we need fresh changes at not just tier 10, but throughout all tiers. They shouldn't come from new mechanics every 6 months, but from making all tanks exciting again. The amount of power crap tanks in the game is absolutely enormous, and I'm 100% sure that a lot of players would be very happy if their all premium tanks would get a facelift and would get buffed or reworked to be fun and enjoyable again. For example, the FE215B on the RU server was reworked, which brought new excitement. Speaking about the RU server, Lässt, studio primarily known for their work on World of Warships, took over the development of the Russian version of World of Tanks around late 2021. Since then, they have implemented several significant changes and reworks focusing on improving game balance.
Aber haben auch einfach geisteskranke CashCow-Aktionen gemacht. Also lässt da, oder weiß ich nicht, du musstest da 18.000 Euro ausgeben, 18.000 Dollar ausgeben, um eine Chance zu haben, einen goldenen Waffenträger zu bekommen. Also bei denen hat's auch gezündet bis zum Umfall. Die haben zwar auch gute Sachen gemacht, aber die haben auch richtig Scheiße gebaut.
And overall player satisfaction. They have been very active in rebalancing maps and tanks, adjusting parameters like firepower, armor and mobility to ensure a fairer game balance. This also includes making weaker tanks more competitive and adjusting overpowered tanks to better fit the game's balance, which wargaming usually takes way too long to...
Ja, Wargaming braucht einfach immer, Digga, du sitzt da einfach immer und denkst dir so, Junge, drehen die an einem Hamsterrad oder nutzen sie den Strom aus einem, keine Ahnung was. Du kannst doch nicht 6 bis 10 Monate brauchen, um einen Patch für einen Panzer rauszubringen, Mann. Das ist einfach so unverständlich.
Test and implement. Overall, Lässt does seem much more committed to evolving the game in response to community feedback and changing gaming landscapes, which is crucial for retaining an active and engaged player base. Wargaming has recently launched a new Battle Pass collaboration with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, introducing theme skins and other content to World of Tanks. In my opinion, a tank game should strive to somewhat keep its historical accuracy, showcasing tanks from various periods with great attention to detail. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle skins, however, are a far cry from the game's usual look. They are colorful, cartoonish, and just plain different from the realistic tank designs players are used to. And while it definitely causes a surge of nostalgia in some due to childhood memories, many think that adding these fictional pop culture skins messes with the game's historical feel. Sure, collaborations like this can be exciting and bring something new to the table, but at the same time Wargaming needs to find a balance, for if they stray too far from the game's historical roots, they risk losing some of the very players who helped make World of Tanks a success.
Fair point. Würde ich ihm sogar recht geben. Also, dass die Kollaborationen gut ausgesucht sein müssen, ne? Und das ist Star Trek als Beispiel mit diesem Raumschiffpanzer, Teenage Ninja Turtles. Was haben wir noch so für Kollaborationen, die einfach ein bisschen zu weit waren? Ich fand Terminator war eine gute Kollaboration. Girls and Panzer, ja. Ja, und das sind nur die, die jetzt gerade recent rausgekommen sind. Warhammer ist vielleicht noch in Ordnung gewesen, weil es ein Kriegsspiel ist. Und Dune ist auch Schmutz gewesen, stimmt. Ja, so die letzten Kollaborationen von Wargaming waren schon echte Scheiße, muss man einfach mal sagen. Könnten halt auch Kollaborationen machen mit, ja, keine Ahnung, Sachen, die halt auch im Zweifelfall dann einfach Kriegsspiele sind.
As I've previously mentioned,
halt
I love
einfach,
this
Punkt.
game and grew up playing it, and as a content creator, I still see so much potential in this game. But I honestly
Oh,
believe
guck mal,
that
ich glaube,
we are in the
Nintendo lässt sich das
24th
zu sehr
hour
bezahlen.
when it comes to saving the game from its ever-increasing depopulation. I also feel like we need a bit of fresh air in the room, and Wargaming has to come up with something huge that will spark a massive positive response from the community. There are loads of different ideas for this, such as graphical overhaul, massive tank rebalancing, the introduction of old, reworked maps to spark some nostalgia, the introduction of very carefully balanced Tier 11 and Tier 12 tanks, more tank customizations, and the list goes on. Most importantly, you as a viewer, what do you think about all that has been said? What is the biggest problem that is ruining the game for you? Is it possible for World of Tanks to regain some of its lost player base and start growing again? One thing is for sure, only time will tell whether its developers decide on abandoning ship and moving on from World of Tanks, or trying to actually preserve its longevity by starting to care about it again. Thank you for watching.
Also, unter uns, ich glaube, eines der besten Kajzoo-Videos, was ich je gesehen habe. Das war, und ohne irgendwelche Raid Shadow Legends Scheiße. Also ohne irgendein blödes Placement da drin, was einem wieder auf die Nerven geht. Harter Stoff auf jeden Fall, der einen schon vollendete Tatsachen stellt. Ja, also ich muss ehrlich gestehen, man hat das nicht so auf dem Schirm. man hat das nicht so auf dem Schirm, wie es anscheinend ist. Also es gibt ja immer wieder Kritik und sonst irgendwas. Aber so ein Video, das knallt. Ganz, ganz, ganz starkes Video von Kajzoo. Muss man wirklich loben. Hat mir sehr gut gefallen. Ja, es kommt nicht so schlimm, wie es ist. Ja, hast du recht. Da hast du tatsächlich recht. Direkt zum Nachdenken an, ja. Ja. Da stimme ich dir zu. Freunde, das soll es von diesem YouTube-Video gewesen sein. Vielen, vielen lieben Dank fürs Anschauen. Lasst gerne eine positive Bewertung da. Schaut gerne bei Kajzoo vorbei, der das Video hier initial geschnitten hat. Ganz liebe Grüße gehen da raus für die extreme große Arbeit. Und ansonsten sehen wir uns im Stream, sehen wir uns auf YouTube. Lasst es euch gut gehen. Euch einen schönen Tag und bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao.
She
Ciao.
says that she loves me, she just wants to fuck me. Got me feeling something, got me feeling nothing. Alcoholic junkie, says she thinks I'm funny.